The snow had soaked through Seren's thin boots 3 miles back, and now she couldn't feel her toes. She stumbled over a hidden root, caught herself against a frost-bitten pine, and pressed her hand against her stomach in a gesture that had become instinctive over the past 5 weeks. The small swell beneath her palm was barely visible, but she felt it. Felt the flutter of something precious and terrified growing inside her. Keep moving. If you stop, you die. If you die, the baby dies. The thought propelled her forward through the frozen borderlands, even as her body screamed for rest. Her wolf, usually a comforting presence beneath her skin, had gone quiet 2 days ago. Too weak to offer guidance, too starved to lend strength. Behind her, somewhere beyond the mountain pass she'd crossed at dawn, lay the Silver Moon Pack. Her pack. Her former pack. The word tasted like ash and betrayal on her tongue. Whore. She could still hear them. Elder Mathis's voice, dripping with righteous disgust. The beta's wife, shrieking accusations across the gathering hall. And Finn Blackwood, the beta's precious son, standing there with false hurt in his eyes as he told the entire pack that she had seduced him. That she had thrown herself at him, desperate to climb above her Omega station. No one mentioned the bruises on her wrists from where he'd pinned her down. No one asked why she'd been found crying in the storage cellar that night, clothes torn, unable to meet anyone's eyes. No one cared. She wanted it, Finn had said, and the pack had believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was the beta's son, golden-haired and charming, destined for greatness. She was just Seren Windrider, orphaned Omega, daughter of nobody important, useful only for the menial tasks no one else wanted. When her pregnancy became impossible to hide, the pack's judgment had been swift. Alpha Vance himself had pronounced the sentence, his cold eyes passing over her as if she were already dead. You have brought shame upon Silver Moon. You are cast out, effective immediately. Any pack member who offers you aid will share your fate. They hadn't even let her gather her belongings, hadn't given her a coat or food or water. They'd simply opened the gates and watched her walk into the frozen wilderness, their silence worse than any curse. That had been 8 days ago. Seren's legs gave out without warning. She crashed to her knees in the snow, her palms burning against the ice, and for a long moment she simply stayed there, breathing, trying to remember why she should get up. The baby. The baby was why. Whatever Finn had done to her, whatever violence had created this life inside her, the child was innocent. And somewhere deep in her wolf's instincts, Seren knew with a certainty that defied logic, that this baby was meant to exist, that she was meant to protect it, even if protection meant dragging herself through hostile territory until her heart gave out. She forced herself upright, one foot, then the other. Keep moving. The trees were different here, darker. The pines gave way to ancient oaks with bark like charcoal, their branches heavy with ravens that watched her passage with knowing eyes. She'd crossed into Ravencrest territory 2 hours ago, and every step since had felt like walking deeper into a predator's den. The Ravencrest pack was legendary, feared. Their Alpha King had united 7 warring packs under his banner through a combination of strategic brilliance and brutal efficiency. Wolves whispered his name like a curse. Darius Ravencrest, the Black Wolf, the King of Shadows. They said he'd killed his own father to take the throne. They said he showed no mercy to trespassers. Seren knew the stories were probably exaggerated. Probably. But even exaggerated death was preferable to the slow freeze claiming her body. She made it another 100 yards before the growl stopped her cold. 3 wolves emerged from the shadow of the oaks, massive, dark-furred, their eyes gleaming with territorial aggression. Border guards. Seren's wolf tried to rise, tried to bare teeth in warning, but there was nothing left. She swayed on her feet, one hand still pressed to her stomach, and watched her death approach. Please. The words scraped from her raw throat. I just need. I'm not a threat. I'm alone. The largest wolf shifted. He became a mountain of a man, dark-skinned and scarred, with braided hair and eyes that held no warmth. A trespasser is a trespasser, Omega. Where's your pack? Gone. Seren's voice cracked. Cast out. I have no pack. Something flickered in his expression. Disgust? Pity? She couldn't tell, and she was too tired to care. Packless, pregnant, and wandering into the king's territory. He exchanged a glance with his companions. Either you're the worst spy in history, or the gods have a cruel sense of humor. I'm not a spy. That's for the king to decide. He stepped forward, and metal glinted in his hands. Chains. Silver-lined chains that would suppress her wolf completely. By order of King Darius Ravencrest, you are detained for unlawful entry into sovereign pack lands. You will be brought before the throne for judgment. Seren didn't resist when he locked the manacles around her wrists. She didn't have the strength. Instead, she let them drag her through the frozen forest, past patrol stations and snarling sentries, toward the towering silhouette of a fortress that rose from the mountain like a crown of black stone. The Ravencrest stronghold. She was going to die here. She knew it with the same certainty that she'd known the baby needed to live. The universe was apparently fine with contradictions. The throne room was vast and terrible. Obsidian pillars stretched toward a vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. Torches burned with pale blue flames that cast no warmth, and hundreds of wolves lined the walls in silent witness to her judgment. Seren counted steps as the guards marched her forward, 20, 40, 60, until they forced her to her knees at the base of a raised dais. She kept her head bowed, survival instinct beaten into her by years of Omega submission. Don't challenge, don't provoke, don't give them a reason to hurt you worse. A trespasser. The voice that spoke was deep and resonant, carrying the weight of absolute authority. In chains, packless by the scent of her. Look at me, Omega. The command sliced through her like a blade. Her wolf, silent for days, suddenly stirred beneath her skin. Heat pulsed in her chest, unexpected, overwhelming, wrong. Her head lifted against her will, and the world stopped. King Darius Ravencrest sat on a throne carved from a single piece of black granite, his massive frame radiating power that made every wolf in the room want to bare their throat. He was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. Sharp cheekbones, a cruel mouth, hair black as raven feathers falling past his shoulders. His eyes were steel gray, cold and assessing, and they locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. Then those eyes changed. Gold bled into the gray like sunrise burning through storm clouds. His pupils dilated. His nostrils flared, drawing in her scent, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. Not a threat, but something far more primal. His hands gripped the throne's armrests, and Seren heard wood crack beneath his fingers. No, no, it's not possible. But her wolf was already surging forward, pressing against her skin with a recognition that defied every rational thought in her head. Warmth flooded her veins, chasing away the cold that had lived in her bones for weeks. Her heart slammed against her ribs, her vision sharpened until she could see nothing but him. This terrifying king, this stranger, this impossible answer to a question she'd never dared ask. Mate. The word echoed through her mind like a thunderclap. The ruthless Alpha King is my mate. Darius rose from his throne. The movement was fluid, predatory, and every wolf in the room dropped to their knees in automatic submission. He descended the steps slowly, never breaking eye contact, and stopped directly before her. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. His scent washed over her. Pine smoke and winter storms and something darker beneath, something that made her wolf howl with desperate, terrible joy. "What?" he said quietly. "Have they done to you?" The question shattered something inside her. Not an accusation, not a demand. Just those words, spoken in a voice that trembled slightly despite its power, as if her suffering personally wounded him. Seren opened her mouth to answer, but exhaustion and shock and 5 weeks of horror chose that moment to crash through her defenses. The world tilted. She heard him snarl something to the guards, felt strong arms catch her before she hit the ground, and then darkness swallowed her whole. Seren surfaced from darkness slowly, like a swimmer clawing toward light through deep water. Her first awareness was warmth, real warmth, not the cruel teasing of hypothermia's final stages. Soft fabric beneath her fingertips, the crackle of a fire somewhere nearby, and a scent, pine smoke and winter storms, that made her wolf stir with an urgency that bordered on pain. Her eyes opened. She lay in a bed large enough to fit 4 wolves, piled with furs so thick her body had sunk into them like a nest. The room was unfamiliar. Stone walls hung with tapestries depicting running wolves beneath full moons, a fireplace blazing with actual orange flames instead of the eerie blue torches from the throne room, and windows covered with heavy drapes that blocked all natural light. Candles flickered on a bedside table, casting dancing shadows across the ceiling. Not a cell. Her mind struggled to process this. They hadn't thrown her in a dungeon to await execution. They'd put her in what looked like guest quarters fit for visiting nobility. Why? The answer came with the soft click of a door opening. King Darius Ravencrest entered the room, and every thought in Seren's head scattered like startled birds. He'd changed from his formal throne attire into simpler clothes, a dark shirt unlaced at the throat, leather trousers, boots worn soft from use. His raven-black hair was tied back now, revealing the sharp angles of his face, the strong line of his jaw. He carried a tray in his hands. He was bringing her food. The Alpha King was personally bringing her food. Their eyes met, and that inexplicable heat exploded through her chest again, stronger now that she was conscious to feel its full force. Her wolf pressed against her skin with desperate recognition, and Seren had to grip the furs beneath her hands to keep from reaching toward him. The silver-lined manacles were gone, she realized distantly. Someone had removed them while she slept. Her wolf was no longer suppressed, and it wanted nothing more than to throw herself at the stranger's feet. Mate, mate, mate. You're awake. His voice was quieter than it had been in the throne room, stripped of the commanding resonance that had echoed off obsidian pillars. He set the tray on the bedside table, broth, bread, dried fruit, and stepped back as if giving her space. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. The healer said it was exhaustion and early-stage starvation, compounded by frostbite and... His jaw tightened. And the stress of pregnancy. Seren's hand flew to her stomach. The movement was instinctive, protective, and she hated how it revealed her fear. The baby is fine. He cut her off, the words rough. The healers confirmed it. Strong heartbeat, no signs of distress. His gray eyes dropped to where her palm pressed against the small swell beneath the blankets, and something flickered across his face that she couldn't read. You need to eat. Your body is burning through reserves it doesn't have. She should eat. She knew she should eat, but her mind was still reeling from the impossible truth that her wolf kept howling, and she couldn't make sense of any of it. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why am I in a guest chamber? Why aren't I in a cell? I trespassed on your territory. Your guard said. My guards follow protocols for unknown intruders. Darius's voice hardened slightly. You are not an unknown intruder. You are my... He stopped, inhaled slowly. When he spoke again, his words came measured, careful. You are under my protection. No cell, no chains, Not ever. My mate. He'd almost said it. The words hung unspoken in the air between them, so obvious that denying them felt absurd. Serene's thoughts churned. The mate bond was supposed to be sacred, beautiful, a gift from the moon goddess herself. She'd dreamed of it as a child, imagined a handsome wolf from a neighboring pack who would recognize her and sweep her into a life of belonging. She'd stopped dreaming after Finn, after the pack cast her out, after she'd accepted that she was destined to die alone in the snow. She'd never imagined this. A king, a predator who united 7 packs through what the stories called brutality. A male so powerful that his mere presence made her wolf want to submit and claim him simultaneously. I can't be your mate. The words tumbled out, desperate and illogical. That's not. I'm nobody. I'm packless. I'm carrying another wolf's. She choked on the word, on the memory of Finn's weight pinning her down, of her own screams swallowed by the storage cellar's stone walls. Darius moved. One moment he stood by the bed, the next he was kneeling before her, lowering his massive frame until his eyes were level with hers. The position should have looked submissive. Instead, it looked like a predator coiling before it struck. Contained power, deliberate restraint. Look at me. The command was softer this time, but no less compelling. Seren lifted her gaze and found herself drowning in gray eyes that burned with barely leashed gold. I know what your scent tells me, he said quietly. I know you didn't choose what happened. I know the child you carry was forced on you against your will. His hand stayed at his sides, not touching her, though the tension in his shoulders suggested he wanted to. That changes nothing about what you are to me. What the bond is. I didn't ask for a mate any more than you did, but the goddess doesn't make mistakes. Her wolf keened with desperate hope. Seren fought to keep her voice steady. The stories say you killed your own father, that you show no mercy. Why would I believe? The stories are true. No hesitation, no shame. My father was a tyrant who murdered my mother when I was 12 years old. He slaughtered innocent wolves for imagined slights. He would have destroyed this pack and every territory it touches. His jaw flexed. I executed him for his crimes. I would do it again. The honesty struck her silent. She'd expected denial, justification, deflection. Not this brutal acknowledgement delivered without flinching. I am not a gentle male, Darius continued. I have done terrible things in service of my people. I will do terrible things again if my kingdom requires it. He leaned closer, and his scent wrapped around her like a physical embrace, making her wolf shudder with longing. But I will never harm you. I will never allow anyone else to harm you. And I will never, never force you to accept a bond you don't want. He rose then, stepping back, creating distance between them that felt wrong even though she knew it shouldn't. Eat, he said again. Rest. The healers will check on you in the morning. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. There are guards outside, but they're not there to keep you in. They're there to keep anyone else out. You're safe here, Seren. Her name in his mouth sent shivers down her spine. You know my name. A ghost of a smile touched his cruel mouth. You said it. In the throne room, when my guards asked. I was listening. His eyes met hers one final time, gold flickering through the gray. I'll always be listening. The door closed behind him, leaving Seren alone with a tray of food, a warm fire, and a wolf that howled with confused, desperate joy. She ate. Not because he'd told her to, but because her body demanded sustenance and her baby needed strength. The broth was rich, perfectly seasoned, and she had to force herself to take slow sips instead of gulping it down. The bread was fresh, soft. Nothing like the stale scraps she'd survived on during her exile. By the time she finished, exhaustion was pulling at her again, but her mind refused to settle. Mate. The word kept echoing. The Alpha King is my mate. She slept poorly that night, dreaming of gray eyes bleeding gold and strong hands that never quite touched her. The next morning, a healer named Mira, a small, sharp-featured Omega with kind eyes, examined her thoroughly and declared both Seren and the baby stable, but in need of rest and nutrition. She brought more food, helped Seren bathe in a copper tub filled with water that smelled of lavender and healing herbs, and produced clothes that actually fit. Soft wool dresses, warm stockings, boots lined with fur. "The king ordered them," Mira said when Seren asked. "Had the palace seamstress working through the night. He wanted you comfortable." Seren didn't know what to do with that information. She filed it away alongside the guest chamber and the guards, and the way he'd knelt before her like an equal instead of demanding her submission. 3 days passed. Darius didn't return, but his presence permeated everything. The food that arrived at regular intervals, rich and nourishing. The fire that was always tended, never allowed to die. The fresh flowers that appeared on her windowsill each morning, winter blooms that must have come from a greenhouse, small gestures, deliberate care. He was giving her space, she realized. Time to adjust. On the 4th day, Seren finally ventured beyond her chambers. The guards outside her door were a mated pair, a tall male with a gentle demeanor and a female with fierce eyes who introduced herself as Captain Thea. They escorted her through winding corridors, past tapestry-lined halls and through courtyards, where wolves in human form trained with swords and spears. Everyone they passed stopped what they were doing to stare. She heard the whispers. "Packless, the king's mate. They say she was raped, carrying another wolf's child. Why would he want her?" Seren kept her spine straight, her chin lifted, her hand pressed protectively over her stomach. She wouldn't let them see her break. The great hall where she eventually found food was cavernous and crowded with wolves eating breakfast. The moment she entered, conversation stuttered and died. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her, curious, suspicious, hostile. She made it 3 steps toward an empty table before a voice rang out. "So, this is what desperation looks like." A woman rose from the head table, and even from across the room, Seren could see she was stunning. Pale hair cascaded over silk-clad shoulders, delicate features arranged in an expression of amused contempt. She walked toward Seren with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. "Lady Ivy Stormborn." The introduction was perfunctory, dismissive. "I've been hearing the most interesting rumors. The Alpha King's mate found starving in the snow, already swollen with another wolf's bastard." Her lip curled. "Tell me, did you plan this scheme before or after your pack threw you out for whoring?" The hall was silent. Watching. Waiting. Seren's wolf snarled inside her, but she kept her voice steady. "I planned nothing. I was cast out for being a victim, not a criminal." "A victim?" Ivy's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "Is that what you call it when you spread your legs for the beta's son and then cried assault when he wouldn't claim you properly?" She stepped closer, her scent sharp with aggression. "You're not worthy to breathe the same air as our king, let alone share his bed. The bond must be defective. The goddess made an error." "That's enough." The voice cracked through the hall like thunder. Darius stood in the doorway, still as death, his eyes blazing pure gold. The fury radiating from him was so intense that wolves throughout the room dropped to their knees in automatic submission. Even Lady Ivy paled, though she held her ground. "Your Majesty, I said enough." He crossed the hall in long strides, and the crowd parted before him like water before a blade. He stopped directly beside Seren, not touching her, but close enough that his warmth seeped through her dress. His voice dropped to something lethal. "You will apologize." Ivy's jaw tightened. "I spoke only the truth as I understand it. You spoke lies designed to humiliate a woman under my protection." Darius's hand landed on Seren's lower back, a possessive gesture that sent heat flooding through her entire body. She carries no bastard. The child's scent proves it was forced on her against her will. And Seren Windrider has more honor in her smallest finger than anyone who would condemn a victim for her suffering. The hall was utterly silent. Even the torches seemed to stop flickering. You forget yourself, Darius continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Seren is my mate. The bond is true. Any insult to her is an insult to the crown itself. His gold eyes swept across the assembled wolves. Let there be no confusion about this. Any wolf who disrespects my mate will answer to me personally. Lady Ivy's face had gone white, then red. For a moment, Seren thought she might argue, might push back against the public humiliation. Instead, she dropped into a shallow curtsy, her eyes burning with barely concealed hatred. Forgive me, Your Majesty. I misspoke. The words were directed at Darius, not Seren, and they dripped with insincerity. I'm sure your mate is everything you deserve. She turned and swept from the hall without waiting for dismissal. Silence held for a long moment before the wolves began returning to their meals, conversations resuming in hushed tones. Darius's hand remained on Seren's back. Come with me. He guided her through a different door, away from the staring crowds, into a private dining room with a table set for two. The door closed behind them, shutting out the whispers, and suddenly, they were alone. I'm sorry. His voice was rough. I should have anticipated that. Should have been with you when you first left your chambers. You can't protect me from everyone who whispers. Seren's voice came out steadier than she felt. They'll always see me as the packless Omega who trapped their king. Then they're fools. He pulled out a chair for her, waiting until she sat before taking the seat across from her. The table was small, intimate, and she was acutely aware of how close he was. I don't care what they see. I care what you are, what the bond is. And what is the bond? The question escaped before she could stop it. I never expected. Neither did I. His admission was quiet, almost vulnerable. I'd given up on finding a mate, resigned myself to a political marriage, an alliance that would strengthen the kingdom. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing the back of her hand, the first time he'd touched her since catching her in the throne room. The contact sent lightning racing up her arm. And then you walked into my throne room in chains, half dead and defiant, and my entire world shifted. Her wolf surged toward him, desperate for more contact. Seren pulled her hand back, frightened by the intensity of her own longing. I can't be what you need. I'm damaged. I'm carrying another wolf's child. Your court will never accept. My court will accept what I tell them to accept. The authority was back in his voice, tempered now with something gentler. And you're not damaged, Seren. You're surviving. There's a difference. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time saw past the terrifying exterior to the wolf beneath. Lonely, powerful, and isolated, bearing the weight of a kingdom he'd won through blood and strategy. He hadn't asked for a traumatized mate any more than she'd asked for a ruthless king, but here they were. I need time, she whispered. I can't. Not yet. You'll have all the time you need. He rose, circled the table, and stopped beside her chair. His hand lifted, hesitated, then settled gently on her shoulder. Even through her dress, his touch burned. I won't push you. I won't claim what isn't freely given. When you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be here. He left her there with a table full of food and a heart that was beginning, despite everything, to crack open. Seren sat alone in the private dining room for a long time after Darius left. The food grew cold on the table. Rich stew and fresh bread, more than she'd seen in the 8 days she'd wandered starving through the borderlands. But her appetite had vanished beneath the weight of his words. When you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be here. Her hand drifted to her shoulder where his touch still lingered like a brand. The mate bond hummed beneath her skin, a constant awareness of him that she couldn't silence no matter how hard she tried. She could feel his presence somewhere in the palace, distant but unmistakable, like the pull of the moon on the tides. A soft knock at the door made her startle. "My lady?" Mira's voice filtered through the wood. "May I enter?" Seren cleared her throat. "Yes. Come in." The small healer slipped inside, her sharp features creased with concern as she took in the untouched meal. "You need to eat. For the child, if not for yourself." "I know." Seren pulled the bowl of stew toward her, forcing herself to take a spoonful. The flavors were rich, perfectly seasoned, and her stomach cramped with sudden hunger. "I just needed a moment." Mira settled into the chair Darius had vacated, her kind eyes watchful. "Lady Ivy's display was cruel, but you handled it with more grace than most would have managed." "The king handled it." Seren took another bite, then another, her body's needs overwhelming her emotional turmoil. "I just stood there." "You stood your ground. That's not nothing." Mira leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You should know. Lady Ivy has been angling for the queen's position for years. She's the daughter of the Northern Territory's most powerful lord, and many expected the king to make a political match with her house." Seren's spoon stilled halfway to her mouth. She wanted to be queen. Once. Present tense. Mira's expression grew serious. "The mate bond changes everything. Of course, no wolf can dispute a true bond. But Lady Ivy, she's not the type to accept defeat gracefully." The stew suddenly tasted like ash on Seren's tongue. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful." Mira reached across the table and squeezed Seren's hand. "The king can protect you from open threats, but there are other ways to hurt someone. Whispers, isolation, small cruelties that leave no visible marks." She paused. "I've served in this palace for 10 years. I've seen what ambitious wolves will do for power." Seren thought of Lady Ivy's burning eyes, the hatred barely concealed behind that insincere curtsy. "I'm sure your mate is everything you deserve." The words had dripped with venom, with promise. "Thank you for the warning," Seren said quietly. Mira nodded and rose. "Finish your meal, my lady. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, come to me, or to Captain Thea. We serve the king, and that means we serve you now too." After the healer left, Seren forced herself to eat every bite on her plate. For the child, she told herself. Always for the child. But even as she ate, her instincts prickled with unease she couldn't name. 3 days passed in uneasy peace. Seren established a careful routine. Breakfast in her chambers, a walk through the palace gardens with Captain Thea shadowing her at a respectful distance. Afternoons spent in the library where ancient texts detailed the history of the 7 united packs. She saw Darius at formal dinners, but rarely alone, as if he was deliberately giving her the space she'd requested. It should have been a relief. Instead, she found herself searching for him in crowds, her wolf straining toward his presence with an ache that grew stronger each day. Lady Ivy had not appeared at court since her public humiliation. The whispers suggested she'd retreated to her family's chambers in the East Wing, nursing her wounded pride. Seren tried to believe it was over, that the woman had accepted her defeat. She didn't quite succeed. On the 4th morning, Seren woke to find a small package outside her door. Wrapped in silver paper and tied with a black ribbon, it bore no note, no indication of the sender. Inside lay a delicate crystal vial filled with amber liquid. "Honey wine," Captain Thea said when Seren showed her, sniffing the contents. "Traditional gift for expectant mothers. It's supposed to ensure an easy birth." "From who?" Thea frowned. "One of the staff, perhaps? Trying to curry favor?" Seren turned the vial in her hands, watching the liquid catch the morning light. Her wolf stirred uneasily, pressing against her skin with warning. Something felt wrong, though she couldn't articulate what. "I don't want it," she said finally. "Take it away." The guard's fierce eyes met hers with new respect. "Smart instincts, my lady. I'll have Mira examine it, just to be safe." As Thea left with the vial, Seren pressed her hand against the small swell of her belly. The child within had begun to feel more real to her in these past days. Not a mark of violation, but a life she was fiercely determined to protect. "No one will hurt you," she promised silently. No one. That evening, Darius found her in the greenhouse. Seren had discovered it by accident during her wanderings, a glass-walled paradise filled with flowers that shouldn't have survived in Ravencrest's harsh climate. Roses bloomed beside exotic orchids, their perfume mixing with the earthier scent of herbs and growing things. She'd taken to spending twilight hours here, watching the sunset paint the glass walls in shades of amber and rose. "I thought I might find you here." His voice was low, careful, as if approaching a wild creature that might bolt. Seren looked up from the moonflower she'd been examining, night-blooming white petals just beginning to unfurl in the fading light. "Your guards report my every movement?" "Thea mentioned you seemed troubled today. The gift?" He moved closer, and the greenhouse suddenly felt smaller, warmer. Mira examined it. The wine was laced with moonsbane. Ice flooded her veins. Moonsbane. A poison that targets wolves specifically. Slowly weakens the connection to the animal spirit, eventually killing it entirely. His jaw was tight, his gray eyes storm-dark. In pregnant females, it kills the child first. Seren's hand flew to her stomach, her breath coming fast and shallow. Someone tried to murder my mate and my heir." "Yes." The growl in his voice made the glass walls vibrate. "We're tracing the origin of the package. Whoever sent it will answer for this." She should have been afraid. Instead, rage kindled in her chest, pure, protective fury that made her wolf surge forward with answering fire. "It was Ivy." "We don't know that yet." "I know it." Seren turned to face him fully, her hands curling into fists. "She told me exactly what she thought of me in that great hall. A packless Omega carrying another wolf's bastard, unfit to stand beside the king. She looked at me like I was something to be scraped off her shoe." Darius's expression shifted, something dangerous flickering beneath the surface. "If it was her, she'll face the full weight of our laws. Attempted murder of a royal mate is punishable by death." Death! The word should have satisfied her. Instead, Seren felt suddenly exhausted, the rage draining away to leave cold fear in its wake. She'll try again. If not her, someone else. There will always be someone who sees me as the weakness in your armor. Then they see wrong. He closed the distance between them, and Seren didn't retreat. Couldn't retreat, not with the bond pulling her toward him like a physical force. "You're not my weakness, Seren. You're my strength. You don't know me. I know enough." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his massive hands. His palms were rough with sword calluses, warm against her chilled skin. "I know you survived horrors that would have broken most wolves. I know you protected your child when your own pack abandoned you. I know you looked death in the face and kept walking." Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "That's survival. That's not strength. They're the same thing." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, impossibly gentle from hands that had killed countless enemies. "My mother told me that before my father murdered her. She survived him for 12 years, protected me from his worst rages, and died only because she stepped between us one time too many." His voice cracked, just barely. "Survival is the greatest strength there is." Seren stared at him, this feared king who had conquered 7 packs through blood and strategy, and saw the grieving boy beneath the crown. He understood. truly understood, in a way her former pack never had. He pinned me down in a storage cellar, she heard herself say. The words came out flat, disconnected, but something released in her chest as she spoke them. Finn, the beta's son. I'd rejected his advances for months, and that night he'd been drinking, and he said he'd teach me my place. Her voice wavered. No one believed me. His mother found us and said I'd seduced him, said I was trying to trap her son into mating a worthless orphan. Darius's hands tightened fractionally on her face, but his touch remained gentle. Amber bled slowly into his gray irises as his wolf responded to her pain. I'll kill him. The words weren't a threat. They were a promise, spoken with absolute certainty. Give me his name and I'll tear out his throat myself. Finn Blackwood. Speaking the name felt like pulling a thorn from an infected wound, painful, but cleansing. The beta's son of the Silver Moon Pack. Then Finn Blackwood is already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. She should have argued. Should have said that revenge wouldn't heal her, that violence only bred more violence. Instead, warmth bloomed behind her ribs, the first heat she'd felt in months that wasn't born of fear or pain. Someone believed her. Someone would fight for her. Her wolf rose and pressed toward his presence with desperate longing. I'm scared, she whispered. Not of Ivy, or the court, or the wolves who want me dead. I'm scared of this. She gestured between them. The bond. What it means. I've spent 5 weeks learning that trust only leads to betrayal, and now you're asking me to trust again. I'm not asking anything. He leaned forward until his forehead rested against hers. His breath was warm on her lips, his scent surrounding her, pine and winter frost and something dark that made her pulse race. I'm offering. There's a difference. Seren closed her eyes, letting herself exist in that moment. Connected, protected, maybe even wanted. The bond thrummed between them like a second heartbeat. This could be real, she thought. This could be mine. The poisoning attempt had consequences Seren hadn't anticipated. Within hours of the discovery, palace security doubled. Guards appeared at every corner, and the staff who brought her meals were suddenly shadowed by a second servant who watched them prepare each dish. Her chambers were searched daily for any foreign objects, and Captain Thea took to sleeping in the antechamber outside Seren's bedroom. The investigation proceeded with ruthless efficiency. Servants were questioned. Package deliveries were traced through a chain of intermediaries. By the end of the second day, the trail pointed unmistakably toward the eastern wing of the palace, toward Lady Ivy Stormborn's quarters. But Ivy was clever. She'd used servants who owed her favors, cutouts who couldn't directly connect her to the crime. When guards arrived to question her, she expressed appropriate horror at the attempt on the future queen's life and offered full cooperation with the investigation. She's playing innocent, Thea reported grimly on the third morning. And doing it well. Without direct proof, the king can't move against a lord's daughter without risking political consequences. Seren's hands trembled as she forced down her breakfast. So she gets away with it. For now. But the king has eyes on her. She won't be able to breathe without someone watching. The guard's expression hardened. And if she tries again, we'll catch her in the act. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they settled in Seren's gut like stones. If she tries again. When? Not if. They all knew it was coming. The only question was what form the next attack would take. That night, Seren dreamed of poison. She walked through an endless corridor of black stone, and from every doorway came the scent of moonsbane, sickly sweet, cloying, filling her lungs until she couldn't breathe. Ahead, she could see her child, impossibly already born, crying in a cradle surrounded by darkness. She ran toward the sound, but the corridor stretched on forever, and the crying grew weaker with each step. You can't protect it, a voice whispered. Ivy's voice echoing from nowhere and everywhere. Packless whore. Bastard child. You'll watch it die, and there's nothing your precious king can do. Seren woke gasping, her hand pressed against her belly, tears streaming down her face. The child fluttered beneath her palm, the first movement she'd felt, and she sobbed with relief and terror in equal measure. She couldn't just wait for the next attack. Couldn't hide in her chambers while Ivy plotted and schemed and waited for her opportunity. She had to act. She had to fight. The next morning, Seren went to the greenhouse. But this time, she wasn't seeking peace among the flowers. She walked past the roses and orchids, past the night-blooming moonflowers, until she reached the back corner where the medicinal herbs grew. And there, tucked behind the healing plants where no one would think to look, she found what she was searching for. A row of moonspane, flourishing in the shadows. Someone had been growing the poison here, in the palace itself. And Seren was going to find out who. Seren crouched among the medicinal herbs, her fingers hovering over the moonspane's distinctive silver-veined leaves. The plant shouldn't have been here. The palace greenhouse was maintained by a team of skilled gardeners who knew exactly what grew in every corner, which meant someone had planted this deliberately, hidden it among the healing herbs where casual inspection wouldn't find it. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, weak but present, responding to the threat with a low growl that vibrated through her chest. The pregnancy had awakened something in her. Heightened senses, sharper instincts, a fierce protectiveness that bordered on feral. She could smell the poison now, its sickly sweetness cutting through the greenhouse's floral perfume. Follow the trail, her instincts urged. Find the source. She straightened slowly, scanning the greenhouse for any sign of observation. Morning light filtered through the glass panels overhead, casting everything in soft gold, but shadows pooled in the corners. The gardeners wouldn't arrive for another hour. She was alone. Except, she wasn't. The scent hit her first. Jasmine and something acrid beneath, like rotting flowers. Serene spun just as Lady Ivy Stormborn emerged from behind a towering fern, her beautiful face twisted with hatred that stripped away any pretense of civility. I knew you'd find it eventually. Ivy's voice was silk over steel. Clever little Omega. Too clever for your own good. Seren's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to stand tall. Her hand pressed instinctively against her belly, shielding the flutter of movement within. You've been growing poison in the king's own greenhouse. That's treason. Treason? Ivy laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. Treason is what you've done, worming your way into his bed with your sad story and your bastard child. You think a mate bond makes you worthy? You're nothing. A packless whore who spread her legs for the wrong wolf and got lucky. The words cut deep, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. Anger, hot and bright, burning away the fear that had ruled her for so long. I didn't choose to be attacked, Seren said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. I didn't choose to be cast out, but I chose to survive. And I'm choosing now to stop you. Ivy's expression flickered. Surprise, perhaps, that the cowering Omega had found her spine. Then her hand moved, and steel flashed in the morning light. The blade was small but wickedly sharp, designed for concealment. Ivy lunged with the speed of a trained fighter aiming for Seren's stomach, for the child that threatened everything she'd worked to achieve. Seren threw herself backward, but her foot caught on a raised stone border. She fell hard among the medicinal plants, the impact driving the breath from her lungs. Ivy loomed over her, blade raised, triumph blazing in her eyes. No one will mourn you, Ivy hissed. They'll find your body and assume you finally broke under the pressure. The poor, fragile Omega who couldn't handle court life. Darius will grieve, but he'll recover. And I'll be there to comfort him. The blade descended, and something inside Seren exploded. Heat erupted from her core, flooding outward in a wave of golden light that threw Ivy backward into a rack of potted plants. The noblewoman crashed through terracotta and soil, her scream of shock echoing through the greenhouse. Seren scrambled to her feet, staring at her own hands, which glowed with an inner fire she didn't understand. Her wolf surged against her skin, stronger than it had been in weeks, and knowledge flooded through her. Ancient, instinctive, undeniable. Omega protective power, born of the bond, born of the child, born of desperate need. The glow centered around her womb, a barrier of pure maternal energy that pulsed with each heartbeat. She could feel the child within, could sense its tiny spark of consciousness responding to her power with something like recognition. Mother, it seemed to whisper. Safe. Ivy staggered upright, blood dripping from a gash on her forehead, her perfect composure shattered. What are you? I'm exactly what you said. Seren advanced, and with each step the golden light intensified. A Packless Omega, a survivor, and apparently, something more. She bared her teeth in a wolf's smile. You wanted to kill my child? You'll have to go through me first. The noblewoman's face contorted with fury. She raised the blade again, but her hand was shaking now, her confidence crumbling in the face of power she couldn't comprehend. Serene moved. She didn't think, just acted, her body responding to instincts she hadn't known she possessed. She caught Ivy's wrist, twisted, and the blade clattered to the stone floor. Then she was behind the noblewoman, one arm locked around her throat, holding her immobile with strength that shouldn't have been possible for an Omega. You're going to confess, Seren said against Ivy's ear. Everything. The poison, the moonsbane, the plot to kill me and my child. And you're going to do it in front of witnesses. Never. Ivy struggled, but Seren's grip was iron. Kill me if you want. I'll never give Darius the satisfaction. Seren's response was primal, instinctive. A howl that tore from her throat and shattered through the greenhouse, through the palace walls, through the very stones of the stronghold. It was a summoning, a call that resonated with every wolf in Ravencrest territory, a sound that demanded answer. Within moments, she heard them coming. Running footsteps, the crash of doors, the thunder of a king who felt his mate's call and responded with every fiber of his being. Darius burst through the greenhouse entrance with murder in his amber eyes. Guards flanked him, Captain Thea, the scarred border guard who'd first captured Seren, a dozen others with weapons drawn. They stopped short at the sight before them. Seren, glowing with golden light, holding Lady Ivy Stormborn in a grip that wouldn't yield. She tried to kill me, Seren said calmly, though her heart was racing. She grew the moonsbane here, in your own greenhouse. She admitted everything. Ivy writhed in her grasp. Lies! The Omega attacked me. I was simply walking in the gardens. Enough. Darius's voice cut through her protests like a blade. He approached slowly, his gaze never leaving Seren's face, and she saw something shift in his expression. Wonder, pride, a fierce joy that made her chest ache with longing. My mate, he said softly, and the words held reverence. Look at you. The golden light faded as his presence calmed her wolf, but Seren didn't release her grip on Ivy. She needs to confess, publicly, so no one can claim I fabricated evidence. Darius nodded once, then turned his attention to the woman who had tried to murder his mate and child. His eyes went cold in a way that made several guards step back instinctively. Lady Ivy Stormborn. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. You stand accused of attempted murder of the royal mate, attempted murder of the royal heir, and high treason against the crown. What do you have to say? Ivy's composure finally cracked completely. Seren felt the moment it happened, the noblewoman's body going rigid, then slumping in defeat. She's just a packless whore. The words tore from Ivy's throat in a scream of frustrated rage. I would have given you pure heirs. I would have been a worthy queen. My father rules the Northern Territory. I was promised the throne since birth. And you chose this. This nothing. This violated Omega carrying another wolf's seed. Silence. Darius's command cut through her ravings. He stepped closer, and Seren released Ivy, letting her crumple to the ground between them. You confess, then, to the poisoning, to the attempt on my mate's life, to the plot against the crown. Ivy's laugh was wild, unhinged. Yes. Yes, I confess. I would have done it 100 times. You were supposed to be mine, Darius. The kingdom was supposed to be mine. The king looked down at her with something like pity mixed with disgust. You were never mine, Ivy. The bond chose, and it chose well. He gestured to the guards. Take her. For attempted murder of my mate and my heir, I sentence her to exile beyond all Packlands. If she's ever seen within any territory allied with Ravencrest, she'll be executed on sight. Her father will be notified that his daughter's actions have cost him his place in my council. Guards hauled Ivy to her feet, but she wasn't finished. She twisted in their grip, screaming curses at Seren. You'll never be queen. The court will never accept you. You're nothing. Nothing. Enough. Captain Thea's fist connected with Ivy's jaw, and the noblewoman went limp. Apologies, Your Majesty. She slipped. Despite everything, a surprised laugh escaped Seren's lips. The sound was foreign after so many weeks of fear and grief, but it felt right. Real. Darius dismissed the guards with a sharp gesture, and they dragged Ivy's unconscious form from the greenhouse. Seren watched until the noblewoman disappeared from view, until the threat was truly, finally gone. Then she was in Darius's arms, pressed against his chest, breathing in his scent of pine and winter frost, while he held her like she was something precious. You called to me, he murmured against her hair. I felt it. Your howl, reaching through the bond. I've never moved so fast in my life. She was going to kill the baby. Seren's voice shook as the reality of what had almost happened crashed over her. She had a knife, and I fell, and then, I don't know what happened. This light came out of me. Omega protective power. Darius pulled back enough to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Rare. Beautiful. It manifests in Omegas carrying children of great importance, born of the bond between parent and offspring. His voice roughened. You protected our child with pure maternal instinct. You were magnificent. Our child. Not her child. Not the bastard Ivy had sneered about. Ours. The baby isn't yours, she whispered, needing to say it one more time, needing him to understand what he was accepting. The baby is mine in every way that matters. He pressed his forehead to hers. The moment you became my mate, that child became my heir. Nothing. Not blood, not origin, not the whispers of 1,000 courts will ever change that. Something tight and terrified in Seren's chest finally released. They returned to his chambers as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The palace had transformed in the hours since Ivy's arrest, the atmosphere lighter, the servants' faces less guarded. Word had spread quickly about the confrontation in the greenhouse, about the Packless Omega, who had single-handedly subdued a noblewoman twice her station. Seren barely noticed. Her entire awareness had narrowed to the male beside her, to the bond that thrummed between them like a living thing, demanding completion. Darius closed the chamber doors behind them, and the click of the lock seemed to echo in the sudden silence. They stood facing each other in the candlelit room, and for a long moment, neither moved. You don't have to, he said quietly. The bond can wait. After everything you've been through, I won't pressure. Seren crossed the distance between them and pressed her fingers to his lips. I've spent 5 weeks being afraid, being passive, waiting for someone else to decide my fate. She met his eyes, letting him see the certainty there. I choose this. I choose you. Darius exhaled slowly, and she felt the tremor that ran through his massive frame. His wolf was close to the surface. She could see Amber bleeding into gray, could feel the barely leashed power radiating from him. Will you have me? His voice was rough, stripped of the king's authority to reveal only the male beneath. Will you accept my mark? My bond? My protection for the rest of our lives? In answer, Seren tilted her head back, baring the vulnerable column of her throat. The growl that tore from Darius was pure wolf, primal and possessive and reverent all at once. He moved slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but Seren didn't waver. His hands settled on her waist, steadying her, and she felt his breath hot against the junction of her neck and shoulder. Mine. He breathed against her skin. Then his teeth sank in. Pain flared bright and sharp, but almost immediately it transformed into something else. Pleasure that cascaded through her like liquid fire, spreading through her veins, filling every hollow space that grief and trauma had carved inside her. She gasped, her hands fisting in his tunic, as the bond roared open between them. She felt him. Not just his presence beside her, but him, his loneliness, buried beneath decades of duty and violence, his grief for the mother he'd failed to save, his fierce, overwhelming joy at finding her, at finally having someone who was his and his alone, his fear that he wouldn't be enough, that he would somehow fail her as he'd failed others, and beneath it all, love. Not soft or gentle, but wild and consuming and absolutely unwavering. Serene's wolf surged forward, and she understood what she needed to do. She pulled back from his bite, felt the sting of separation, and then rose on her toes to press her mouth against his shoulder. She bit down. Darius made a sound she'd never heard from him. Something between a groan and a howl, vulnerable and triumphant. His arms tightened around her as her teeth broke skin, as her mark carved itself into his flesh. Through the bond, she felt his shock, his wonder, his utter completion. Alpha, her wolf purred. Ours. Mate, his wolf answered. Finally, forever. She released her bite and pulled back to look at him. Blood marked both their mouths, both their shoulders. His mark on her, hers on him. Equal. Mutual. Yours, she whispered. Mine. He pressed his forehead to hers. And I am yours, Seren. Until the stars burn out. They held each other as the bond settled into place, weaving their souls together in a tapestry that could never be unwoven. Through it, Seren felt the steady beat of his heart, the unwavering certainty of his commitment. For the first time since that terrible night in the storage cellar, she felt truly safe. 1 month later, Seren stood on the balcony of the Queen's chambers, her chambers now, watching the sun set over the kingdom that had become her home. Below, the great courtyard was filled with wolves celebrating the formal announcement of her pregnancy, her status as Luna Queen. A warm hand settled on her hip, drawing her back against a familiar chest. The Northern Lords have sent word, Darius murmured against her hair. They've stripped Ivy's father of his titles. Her exile has been confirmed by all 7 packs. She'll never trouble us again. Seren nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. My former pack sent a letter this morning. She felt him tense. What did they want? To grovel. A smile curved her lips, not bitter, but simply indifferent. Alpha Vance himself wrote to beg forgiveness, to offer reparations, to invite me to return as an honored guest. And what did you tell them? Seren turned in his arms, looking up at the male who had given her everything. I didn't respond at all. They don't deserve my words. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her fingers. I have a new pack now. A real one. Darius's smile was slow and warm. You have more than a pack, my love. You have a kingdom, a mate. His hand came to rest on her swelling belly, where their child, their heir, grew stronger every day. A family. The baby kicked against his palm, and Seren laughed at the look of wonder that crossed his fierce features. Our heir will know only love, she said softly. His eyes met hers, burning with promise. Our heirs, he corrected, pulling her closer. I intend to fill this castle with our children. She laughed again, a sound that came easier now, that echoed across their kingdom like music. Through the bond, she felt his joy answering hers, their wolves twined together in perfect contentment. Behind them, the sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Before them stretched a future she had never dared to imagine, full of challenges, certainly, but also full of love, full of belonging, full of hope. Serene Windrider, once packless and broken, had found her home at last, and nothing would ever take it from her again.